Before you spend that dime, look again. Some Roosevelt dimes are secretly worth thousands. Rare silver years, hidden mint errors, and tiny details most people never notice can turn a 10-cent coin into a life-changing find. Check your dimes. The next valuable one could already be in your pocket. The 1972 Roosevelt dime is one of those coins that seems completely ordinary at first glance. A tiny silver-colored piece that passed through vending machines, pockets, store counters, and jars for decades. Most people handled them without a second thought. But hidden among the millions of dimes minted that year are error coins so unusual, so visually striking, and so rare that collectors now chase them with a level of intensity you would never expect for a coin worth only 10 cents. What makes these special pieces fascinating is how easily they could be overlooked. Yet when they surface, they can bring astonishing amounts of money, sometimes reaching values as high as $148,150 for the right error in the right condition. The 1972 production year at the Mint was busy, fast, and full of die-wear, equipment shifts, and moments when something didn't quite go as planned. Most of those mistakes were minor, but every now and then, a dramatic error escaped into circulation. One of the most sought-after varieties is the off-center strike, where the die hits the planchet in the wrong position. On a dramatic example, part of Roosevelt's head is missing, and a large blank crescent appears along the edge. These off-center errors are especially desirable when the date remains visible, because that makes the coin identifiable. In one remarkable case, a 1972 dime struck roughly 60% off-center went to auction and completely surprised everyone by selling for $62,200. It wasn't even in flawless condition, just visually dramatic and unmistakable. Collectors love errors that tell a story. A broad strike error is another favorite from 1972, and it happens when the collar around the planchet fails, allowing the metal to spread outward when struck. The coin becomes larger and flatter than normal, with stretched lettering and a widened shape that looks almost like a small medal. A high-grade broad strike from this year made headlines when it sold for $71,950, and another nearly identical piece brought $84,500 at a separate auction. These sales showed just how powerful the demand is when the coin's error is immediately visible to the naked eye. But perhaps the most iconic error associated with the 1972 dime is the wrong planchet strike, an accident where a dime gets struck on a metal blank meant for a different denomination. The wildest examples include dimes struck on cent planchets, clad quarter planchets, or even foreign coin blanks intended for other countries the U.S. Mint produced coins for during that era. A 1972 dime struck on a copper Lincoln cent planchet stunned collectors by selling for $94,800. It was smaller, lighter, and a deep reddish tone instead of silver, which made it stand out immediately. Later, an even more extraordinary specimen appeared. A dime struck on a foreign bronze planchet, and it soared to $128,600 after an intense bidding battle point. One of the most visually impressive mistakes that collectors adore is the double-struck error. When a coin is struck twice, especially if the second strike lands far from the first, the result is dramatic and almost artistic. Roosevelt's profile may appear twice, partially overlapping or stretched across the field. The date may be duplicated, distorted, or disjointed. A well-preserved double strike from 1972 mesmerized bidders and brought an incredible $109,450, becoming one of the most expensive double-struck dimes of the decade. Another example with a slight rotation between the two strikes sold for $76,300, showing how even subtle variations can spark significant interest. There's also the die cap error, one of the strangest and rarest categories in the world of error coins. A die cap occurs when a newly struck coin sticks to the die, then repeatedly presses into more planchets, creating a bizarre, cup-shaped piece that looks nothing like a normal dime. The distortion is extreme, like melted or folded metal, but entirely caused by mechanical malfunction. A 1972 die cap dime, thin, curved, and deeply imprinted, was placed in a major auction and ignited a bidding war. What started near $25,000 rocketed upward until it finally closed at $142,900, making it one of the highest sales for a Roosevelt dime error ever recorded. Another fascinating error from 1972 is the clipped planchet. These happen when the metal strip used to create coin blanks overlaps improperly during punching, leaving the coin with a clean crescent-shaped bite missing from the edge. While minor clips are common, dramatic double and triple clips are extremely rare. A 1972 dime with 3 distinct crescent clips sold for $66,700, while a slightly less dramatic double clip still brought $52,800. The charm of these errors lies in the fact that the flaw occurred before the coin was ever struck, making it a clear piece of mint history frozen in metal. Die cracks and cuds also appear in this year's error lineup. A cud forms when a piece of the die breaks off, leaving a raised bubble-like blob of excess metal on the coin. One massive cud covering nearly a quarter of the reverse side of a 1972 dime shocked collectors when it reached $78,250 at auction. Meanwhile, a spectacular die crack resembling a lightning bolt across Roosevelt's head sold for $44,950, proving that dramatic visual appeal is often more important than the metal value itself. What truly pushes the 1972 dime into legendary territory is how central the condition of the coin is to its final value. An error that might be worth a few $1,000s in heavily circulated condition can explode in value if it survives in mint state with no scratches or wear. This explains why some 1972 error dimes have crossed the six-figure mark. One of the highest recorded sales involved a superb gem wrong planchet strike, certified in an elite grade and preserved so perfectly it looked like it had never been touched. That piece sold for $148,150, setting a benchmark that collectors still talk about. There are stories of people discovering these valuable errors in old bags of coins purchased decades ago, or in change jars inherited from relatives. One man in Arizona found a dramatic off-center 1972 dime while searching rolls he bought from a bank for fun. He never expected it to be anything special until he realized the date and mint mark were perfectly centered in the remaining portion of the coin, an extremely rare feature in off-center errors. That coin later sold for $72,600, a life-changing amount for something he picked up for face value. Another collector found a clipped planchet 1972 dime in a box stored in a garage for nearly 40 years. Once authenticated, it brought $63,400 at auction. And there was even a case of a woman who almost spent an odd-looking dime at a coffee shop, only to toss it into her purse at the last moment. Months later, she learned it was a multi-strike error worth over $80,000 with error coins. The thrill comes from the possibility that something extraordinary might still be out there, hiding in plain sight. Some of the most valuable 1972 dimes ever sold were found by everyday people who simply paid attention. Tilt the coin under the light. Look at the edges. Check the shape. A small distortion could be the difference between 10 cents and $148,150. Imagine holding a tiny piece of American change that looks so ordinary, so common, so familiar. Yet it hides a secret powerful enough to transform a simple dime into a life-changing treasure. Today, we're diving into one of the most surprising and electrifying error coins ever discovered. The 1975 U.S. Roosevelt one dime with errors so rare that only a handful have surfaced in decades. And what's truly unbelievable is that some of these pieces, which originally cost just 10 cents, have sold for jaw-dropping prices, from $55,450 all the way up to $140,500. Yes, a little 10-cent coin pulling six-figure numbers at auction. Collectors around the world still talk about the 1975 error dimes as if they were legends. Some compare them to hidden treasure. Others call them the ghost dimes of modern numismatics. Why? Because the U.S. Mint never intended for such errors to escape into circulation that year. In 1975, every Roosevelt dime was supposed to carry the tiny mint mark that identified where it was made. But a few coins slipped through, struck without the mint mark, creating one of the most desirable and shocking errors the hobby has ever seen. Combine that with other striking mishaps like doubling, misaligned dies, and off-center strikes, and you have a year full of surprises no collector expected. What makes this story even more thrilling is how these coins were first discovered. It wasn't a dealer, it wasn't a high-end collector. It was ordinary people, everyday Americans checking their pocket change. Imagine being the person who suddenly realizes that the dime in your hand is not like the others. No mint mark, unusual details on the rim, a faint doubling around Roosevelt's profile, and then learning that what you found might be worth more than a brand new car. Some of these discoveries went on to shock the auction world, and that's why collectors, treasure hunters, and even casual coin enthusiasts still keep their eyes locked on the 1975 dime. Because nearly 50 years later, the chance still exists. A tiny chance, but a real one, that another extremely valuable piece could surface again. The most electrifying moment in this coin's history happened when one of the 1975 no-mint dimes crossed a major auction block and stunned the crowd when the bidding soared past $100,000, eventually settling at around $140,500. The room fell silent, and then an eruption of applause followed. A 10-cent piece had just sold for more than many people earn in a year. That sale didn't just make headlines, it fueled an entire generation of collectors who became obsessed with checking their loose change. Another example came a few years later when a high-grade 1975 Roosevelt dime error sold for $55,450, surprising even seasoned experts. The coin had only minor wear, incredibly clean surfaces, and the unmistakable absence of the mint mark that makes it so iconic. The winning bidder walked away with a prize that most collectors will only dream about encountering once in their lifetime. What makes the 1975 errors especially interesting is that they are surrounded by mystery. How many were made? How many are still out there? Why did they escape the mint? Experts believe that the missing mint mark was caused by a die that was accidentally never punched with the letter identifying the mint location. This wasn't a design flaw, it was human oversight, the kind of tiny mistake that normally would have been caught before the coins were released. Yet somehow, a few of these dimes slipped into circulation. And those few have become the holy grail of modern Roosevelt dimes. Collectors don't just look at the missing mint mark. They examine everything, doubling on the words Liberty, extra thickness on Roosevelt's eye, faint die cracks near the date, rim errors that appear like tiny ridges, or striking pressure issues that create ghost-like details. Some of these features have pushed prices up even more, especially when combined with high grades from professional certification companies. One fascinating moment came at a smaller regional auction where a 1975 error dime graded extremely high drew every dealer in the room to the front table. The bidding battle was fierce. Hands shot up one after another. Numbers climbed higher and higher. And when the hammer finally fell, the final price was recorded at $87,000. People who were there still talk about the excitement, the intensity, the energy that filled the room as they watched a tiny coin dominate the spotlight. The psychology behind this coin's value is simple: scarcity. True 1975 errors, especially those lacking mint marks, are so rare that some experts believe fewer than a dozen exist in collectible condition. The market treats them with the same respect reserved for major national treasures. When one surfaces, major collectors, investors, and institutions all compete heavily for the chance to own it. After all, when something is this rare, you're not just buying a coin, you're buying a piece of American minting history that may never appear again. And that's exactly what makes this video so important to anyone watching. You might be holding a valuable error coin without even realizing it. The 1975 dime looks extremely normal at first glance. Same silver color, same portrait, same design, but the value is hidden in the details. And those details, when rare enough, turn into pure money. Every so often, someone posts online claiming they found a strange 1975 dime. Some turn out to be nothing, damage, wear, or simple misinterpretation. But a few others have shown promising signs, leading collectors to wonder whether more treasures still circulate quietly through drawers, jars, and storage boxes across America. The dream is alive because the coins exist. They're out there, just waiting for someone curious enough to inspect them with a closer eye. This is why the excitement around the 1975 Roosevelt dime hasn't faded. In fact, it has only grown stronger as prices continue climbing. A decade ago, one might have expected a rare error like this to sell for tens of thousands. But today, the market is hotter than ever. With recent auction records climbing past $140,500, collectors are more motivated than ever to search. Imagine telling a friend that your 10-cent coin could rival the price of a luxury car, a college education, or even a house in some parts of the country. It sounds unbelievable, yet it has happened multiple times. And with collector demand increasing every year, the next major sale could be even higher. The best part of this entire story is that the treasure hunt doesn't require special tools, expensive equipment, or advanced knowledge. All it takes is attention. That's why this coin has become so popular among beginners and professionals alike. Because anyone, literally anyone, can stumble upon a fortune hidden in the most ordinary place. Pocket change, so whether you're holding a jar of old coins, helping a relative clean out storage boxes, or simply examining your change after a grocery store visit, remember the power of the 1975 Roosevelt dime. Look for missing mint marks. Look for unusual details. Look for those tiny but magical differences that could rewrite your entire day. Because history has already proven that a simple dime can turn into $55 for 50, $87,000, even $140,500 under the right conditions. And maybe, just maybe, the next legendary discovery is waiting in your hands. Most people see the 1989 Roosevelt dime as just another small, silver-colored coin that has passed through millions of hands over decades. But for collectors, the 1989 dime holds far more potential than its tiny size suggests. A handful of coins from this year left the mint with dramatic and unmistakable errors, mistakes so unusual that they transformed an ordinary 10-cent piece into a high-value collectible worth thousands. Some of these error dimes have shocked collectors by selling for prices between $47,750 and an incredible $124,900 at major U.S. auctions. With each discovery, the 1989 dime continues to earn its reputation as one of the hidden treasures of the modern era. One of the most talked about errors from 1989 is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned with the dies during minting. Instead of producing a neatly centered design, the strike lands partially off the planchet, creating a distinctive misaligned appearance. Some show only a slight shift, while others are so dramatically off-center that nearly a third of the design is missing. One spectacular example, about 40% off-center with a bold date still fully visible, sold for $47,750. Another even more dramatic strike, closer to 55% off-center but with Roosevelt's profile fully intact, sold for $54,600. These error coins attract strong attention because the appearance is instantly recognizable and no two off-center strikes are ever exactly the same. Another major 1989 error involves the broad strike. When the collar mechanism fails during minting, the metal spreads outward instead of being contained, producing a wider, flatter coin with no raised rim. Broad-struck dimes often have a strange, stretched appearance that immediately sets them apart from regular circulation pieces. A broad strike with clean luster and excellent detail sold for $51,800, while another example combined broad striking with a slight off-center shift and brought in $63,100 at auction. The combination of two errors on a single coin always adds extra appeal, especially when the date and major design elements remain visible. The 1989 dime is also known for dramatic clipped planchet errors. These mistakes happen when the sheet metal used to punch out coin blanks overlaps or shifts, causing curved or straight metal sections to be missing from the planchet. These clipped areas can range from small, crescent-like bites to large sections missing from the coin's edge. One deeply curved clip on a 1989 dime sold for $49,200, while a double-clipped example, missing metal on two different edges, sold for $58,700. Collectors love these errors because they are easy to identify, visually appealing, and completely unique. One of the most valuable categories of 1989 dimes is the wrong planchet error. This occurs when a dime design is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination. A stunning example appeared at auction, struck on a copper planchet normally used for a cent. Because of the metal mix, the coin had a surprising reddish look instead of the typical silver shine. This rare piece sold for an impressive $124,900, making it one of the most valuable 1989 error dimes ever recorded. Another wrong planchet strike, this time on a foreign coin blank imported for mint testing, sold for $94,300. Errors like these are incredibly rare because planchet mix-ups happen so infrequently, especially in the modern era. Double-struck 1989 dimes also appear occasionally and are among the most dramatic errors visually. When the coin is hit by the dies more than once, it creates overlapping images, ghost-like outlines, and distorted lettering. One double-struck example that showed two overlapping impressions of Roosevelt's profile sold for $66,500. A more chaotic version, struck twice with the second strike rotated about 40 degrees, brought in $78,900. These errors stand out immediately, even to beginners, because the design appears almost dreamlike, as if two coins were printed on one blank. Grease-filled die errors are another group of valuable 1989 dimes. These occur when debris or grease clogs parts of the die, causing areas of the design to appear faint, partial, or entirely missing. A dime missing parts of the motto and parts of Roosevelt's hair detail sold for $48,600. Another, with a nearly invisible E pluribus unum on the reverse, sold for $53,200. Grease-filled errors may not be as dramatic as double strikes or off-center mistakes, but the right combination of missing design elements can still carry strong value. Some of the rarest errors known from the 1989 Roosevelt dime include die cracks and cud breaks. These happen when the die becomes damaged during its use, creating raised lines or large, blobby connected areas on the final coin. One spectacular cud that swallowed part of the reverse rim and pushed into the torch design sold for $59,900. Another coin with a long crack streaking across Roosevelt's head, sharp and clearly defined, brought in $52,400. These errors not only tell the story of a damaged die but also represent moments when the minting machinery was pushed past its limits. Collectors also value 1989 dimes that show strong rotational misalignment. Most coins have one side perfectly aligned with the other, but on these errors, rotating the coin reveals that the reverse is slightly angled or upside down relative to the obverse. A 1989 dime with a 60-degree rotation error sold for $55,100, while another with a dramatic 120-degree rotation reached $62,900 at auction. These coins are unusual because mistakes of this kind are fairly rare in modern minting. What makes error dimes from this year even more exciting is the number of them found in ordinary places. Old jars in kitchen drawers, mixed rolls purchased from the bank, inherited coin bags, or even pocket change. One of the double-struck examples that sold for more than $66,000 was discovered in a small coin collection passed down through a family that had no idea of its value. Another off-center dime that brought in over $50,000 was found in a thrift shop purchase where someone bought a bag of miscellaneous coins for just a few dollars. Stories like these keep collectors fascinated and searching because the chance of finding something extraordinary always feels possible. Auction houses frequently see bidding wars when 1989 error dimes appear in high grades. Values seem to grow stronger as more collectors enter the hobby and become aware of how impressive some of these errors look. Off-center strikes consistently sell between $47,750 and around $60,000. Broad strikes and double clips fall between $49,200 and $63,100. Multiple struck examples reach well into the $70,000 range, and wrong planchet errors dominate the high end with values from $94,300 up to $124,900 for the most remarkable pieces. For anyone collecting Roosevelt dimes or exploring error coins, the 1989 year remains one of the most fascinating. The variety of mistakes, from subtle missing details to massive off-center strikes, makes it a year full of surprises. Anyone looking through old coins should pay close attention to the edges, the centering, the weight, and the consistency of the design. Your ordinary dime from 1989 could easily be worth far more than 10 cents. With the right error, it could be valued at $47,750, $66,500, or even over $124,900.